What's going on, guys? Seller finance deals are my favorite way to invest in rental real estate right now. And so in this video, I'm going to explain why. I'm going to share some of the incredible deals I've been able to find. I'm going to talk to you about exactly what seller finance is, how to go through the process, how to negotiate terms, purchase price, everything else, and get all the way to the closing table so that you can do the same. So with all of that being said, let's jump into it. A couple weeks ago, I shared a video about all of the real estate I've purchased over the last year and how I was able to negotiate and get some of these deals. One of the deals I talked about was a 16-unit apartment complex that I was able to purchase with seller financing at a 3% interest rate. A comment on that video a couple of weeks ago said something along the lines of, "This is insane. What kind of idiot would ever do this? There's no way this is true." What? And to be honest, I understand where they're coming from because it seems insane that someone could find a 3% interest rate right now when the going rate is between 7 and 8% with all kinds of crazy terms and fees to be able to get that loan. But in this video, I'm going to share with you how I'm able to find these deals and why they are a massive win for not only the buyer, but also the seller. We're going to talk about the pros for both the buyer and the seller and how you need to take advantage of these pros to be able to find deals just like this one. First off, let's explain what seller finance is. This is where you as the buyer go to the seller and say, "Hey, I'd like to purchase your property, but instead of going to a bank for a normal mortgage, would you be my bank? Would you lend me a certain percentage of the property? I'll give you the down payment and I'll make my monthly mortgage payments to you." Now, a lot of you might be saying, "That sounds crazy," but it's actually very simple and there are tons of pros for both the buyer and the seller. You need to sit down with the seller or do it back and forth through your realtors and determine what your purchase price is going to be, what your rates are going to be, and what all the terms will be. Whether it's a 30-year AM, if there's a balloon payment, everything that you would discuss with a normal lender at a bank, you're going to discuss with them. And this is really nice for both parties because both of you can cut on fees and figure out something that's advantageous for both parties. Next, you're going to create a promissory note. And a lot of times the title company can help you through this as a third party to make sure everything gets done correctly. And they can work as a third party to make sure that the payments and everything else are set up so that everything goes smoothly. This promissory note is going to outline everything. It's going to make sure that you know what the purchase price is, that you're going to go through what all of the terms, the rates, everything else you agreed upon so that it's all in one place. And so that then with that third party, you can put it into action as you purchase the property. At this point, you can also make sure that the title company makes sure that the title is clean and they do all of their work there. And then a mortgage or deed of trust is filed. You as the buyer then just make your consistent mortgage payments just as if it was a bank, but instead of being a bank, it's the seller. Once everything is paid in full, then a buyer will get a clear title. And this can happen in a couple different ways, whether you pay everything off early, whether you have a balloon payment where you need to refinance with a bank or pay off everything in cash, or if you have a longer setup like I do on a couple of my seller finance properties, you could just ride it out forever until 25, 30 years later, whatever you agreed upon, you've completely paid off the loan. I'm sure a lot of red flags have gone up, and a lot of that comes down to why is this advantageous for the buyer, and more importantly, why would this be advantageous for the seller? First off, let's talk about the pros for the buyer. And the biggest one is it's very easy to qualify for these loans because you're not going through the full process like you would with a bank. You just need the seller to agree to whatever setup you have, and then you're into the loan. Where a bank, you might go apply and they might say no. If you talk a seller into doing it, there's pretty much no qualifications. The other thing I love about these deals is there's usually no closing costs. They're not charging me any points on the front end or anything, or you might pay as much as 3 or 4% in closing costs with a bank. It's also incredible for a buyer because you get flexible terms, and all of these terms are negotiated. So they're not so dependent on the market or the bank or anything else. You just sit down with the seller and you find something that's a win-win for both of you. And a lot of times this means a lot better terms for the buyer because you can get lower interest rates. You're not dealing with any of the upfront fees. These are also awesome because you can close extremely quickly because you're not waiting for all the processes of a bank. So you could close as fast as a week if the title company can get it done for you. This is also ideal for buyers of rental real estate or anyone that's short on cash Because a lot of times if you look, you can find an incredible deal with a low down payment. So not only could you have a low down payment and low interest rates, but if you negotiate a good purchase price, it could be a massive win for a buyer. Now let's talk about the pros for a seller, because a lot of times when I talk about these deals, this is where people don't believe they would actually go through, because they think, what on earth would be the benefit for a seller in this situation? For the seller, this is gonna make it so you can have a very quick sale, because it opens it up to a lot more potential buyers that are very excited about the opportunity to not have to deal with a bank and all of those qualifications. And so you're gonna be able to sell a lot more quickly. And because of this part, you're gonna be able to sell it for most likely a lot more than you would at the market, because you get to negotiate these terms and open up the opportunity to a lot more buyers that would be open to paying more. Even with the properties I've purchased as a buyer, I've paid more on the actual purchase price than I would have had I been getting a usual loan, because the financing options they're giving me give me the ability to pay more because the deal still makes sense. Another thing that sellers love about this is a lot of sellers are at the point where they're wanting to retire and get out of their rental properties that they own in cash. They want to make sure that they get paid a premium, but they don't want that whole lump sum all at once. A lot of them want to continue to get paid over years of retirement, and they don't want to get hit with a massive tax bill. And being able to do deals like this, even if they're taking a lower interest rate than they could putting that money somewhere else, helps them avoid taxes and helps them get it in a place where it's a very safe investment, because the worst case scenario is that they take ownership back over of the property and they've got more cash in the bank. Now, really quickly, I want to talk about the cons of these deals. And this goes for the seller and the buyer. At the end of the day, you are left to whatever you negotiate. So if you negotiate a bad purchase price and bad terms, whether you're the seller or the buyer, these can be a loss for you.
No! God, please, no! No!
But in a lot of the deals that I've done, we end up finding a win for both of us, because the seller is willing to give a substantially lower interest rate than I could get from the bank with none of the upfront costs and being able to close quickly. And I'm able to give them a great situation where I maybe have a larger down payment to make them feel safe, an interest rate they're still happy with, the purchase price that they want, and a situation where they don't have to pay as much tax as they would if I got a bank loan. And so it really is a win-win for both parties.
Nice.
All right, I want to share with you an incredible trick that I've used to be able to find and negotiate on these seller finance deals, because a lot of it is a sell to get the seller excited about it and to figure out what their pain points are and what some of their needs are that they didn't even know were needs, because a lot of them don't understand some of the tax issues they'd run into taking that lump sum. And so I want to talk about how I structure my offers to find seller financing deals. But first, I want to talk about all of the different ways you can use seller financing. First off, there's just traditional, straightforward seller financing where they're giving you a loan on the property. Next is a contract deed or a land contract where you don't completely have full ownership of the property until everything is paid back. Another one of these is a lease to own option where you're technically renting the property and you're making monthly payments, but you have a setup where maybe you've put more down on the front end and an agreement where at some point, some portion of that rent could go towards principal to where you could take over ownership. Another option is a wraparound mortgage where the seller will keep their existing financing but charge you a little bit higher or maybe even the same rate on the financing they already have, so that they're taking a margin on financing they've already got set up. In this scenario, the buyer pays the seller, but then the seller still has to pay the mortgage. The next one is an all-inclusive trust deed, which is similar to a wrap, and I don't know a whole lot about these, so I'm not even going to dive into them. And finally, there are options where you might have a little bit of a hybrid or a combination of a couple of these. So a lot of times I will find a seller and they either say they're slightly open to seller financing, they're not at all open to seller financing, they're somewhere in the middle. Regardless, I ask if I can put in an offer that's a seller financing offer. A lot of times the realtor will say, sure, send it over in an offer, or they'll say, send over what you're thinking in a text and I'll run them by them before you send over the offer. Then what I'll do is I'll find, if I bought this property in cash, what would my price be with current interest rates? And I'll put that offer together. I'll then put another offer together of what it could be at a 5% seller financing deal. And then I'll put a final offer together at what my purchase price would be at a 3% seller financing deal. The reason I do it this way is now they're receiving an offer of, all right, if I pay cash or I get a loan from a bank, I'm gonna pay $500,000. But if we do this seller financing option, I'm gonna pay $525,000. This one, I'm gonna pay $550,000. This one, I'm gonna pay $575,000. And if you can do this kind of seller financing deal, I'm gonna be able to pay $600,000 for this property. This really gives them an option, and it kind of takes them out of their negotiation brain of like, this is what I want. They're looking at paper saying, holy crap, this is exactly the amount that I wanted to get. And all I have to do is be able to give seller financing. Now I'm going to be able to make an interest return on a portion of the money. I'm not going to have the tax issues, and I'm going to get exactly what I wanted out of this property on the sell. This looks like a massive win.
Yeah, boy.
Now, a lot of times people might be slower to be excited about this offer because they don't understand it. And so I want to be able to talk to them personally or coach my realtor to talk to their realtor to talk to them to explain the tax benefits, to be able to explain the interest rate benefits, to be able to explain all of the things that are a massive win for them as a seller so that we can close quickly and so that they can get exactly what they want out of the deal. And sometimes I'll even put in an offer with an interest rate that is so extraordinary that is above what they're asking in their actual asking price, because I know if I can lock in those terms, it's going to be a massive win for both of us. The reason that I made this video is I know that right now there are so many potential sellers out there that would love to offload their property. They're getting close to retirement, but they don't want to get taken advantage of. They don't want to deal with realtors. They don't want to go through the mess. So they've just hung on to their property. There are these people that I promise you that would love a seller financing option because it cuts all the stress out. They can close quickly. They can work with you. They can get money up front and break it out over time. They can have a deal that is incredible. It's seamless. It's easy. It's smooth. It doesn't involve banks, and it's a huge win for you and for them. And I also know there are a lot of you watching this video that have wanted to start investing in real estate or have kind of hit a roadblock where you're not finding deals that are delivering the kinds of returns that you want. And I promise you, if you start sending out mailers, if you're constantly looking on the MLS, if you're connecting with other real estate investors, if you're doing everything you can to just look for seller financing deals, and you're putting out multiple seller finance offers, you're gonna find one, and it's going to be a massive win for not just you, but also the seller. The last thing that I want to say is if you're one of those people that has a potential seller financing deal that you don't want to take on, or that you yourself want to be the seller and you think this would be a win for you and a win for me, reach out to me on Instagram at Chandler David Smith. I would love to connect and put together a deal. I've got one deal under contract right now that I'm going to be purchasing seller finance. I'm so excited to go through all the details of that deal in a future video, but I want to make sure if there are any other questions you want answered that you let me know in the comments, and I'll make sure to include that in the future video where I discuss that deal. So if you guys enjoyed the video, make sure to remember to like, subscribe. We'll look forward to seeing you in the future videos. Thanks so much, and have a great day.